You step into the room, no announcement, no entourage, no raised voice. Still conversations halt. The air seems to shift, not because you spoke, but because your presence did. This is what Machiavelli perfected, not through charm or rank, but through a calculated cold silence that made others recalibrate the moment he arrived. Most men fail to grasp this form of presence. They assume respect must be loud, that authority must be pronounced. They talk fast, laugh to belong, justify themselves before being questioned. In doing so, they expose what Machiavelli warned against: desperation masked as friendliness. Machiavelli lived by another rule, one that distinguished sovereigns from subjects. Let others talk. Let them prove. Your only task is to exist with precision. That's how you become the gravitational center of the space. Because real presence isn't about attention, it's about quiet authority, the kind you never need to request. And that influence begins long before you say your first word. Let's go back in time. Picture Florence's political court: ambassadors, generals, nobles, all wielding rhetoric, battling with speeches, diplomacy, and veiled threats. Machiavelli sat among them, mostly silent, yet slowly they began turning to him before decisions. They listened closer when he shifted. They spoke softer when he entered. They couldn't explain it. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the richest. He simply refused to play the noise game. This was his first law, the discipline of stillness. In a frantic world, a man who doesn't rush, who doesn't blink, who doesn't fill silence, becomes something foreign. And what's foreign is powerful because it can't be read. When you move slowly, when your gaze doesn't wander, when your hands remain still, when your expression stays composed, you disrupt the room's tempo. People begin to wonder, who is this? Why isn't he trying? Why doesn't he look nervous? And it's in those unanswered questions that dominance emerges. Because people don't fear clarity, they fear ambiguity. Machiavelli mastered how to turn that ambiguity into an advantage. His presence became his weapon, refined, sharp, requiring no aggression. Stillness for him wasn't idleness, it was controlled messaging. Each blink, each pause, each breath was intentional. Because when you move, rarely those rare movements speak louder than entire speeches. So he waited while others erupted. He studied while others reacted. He observed. And when he finally acted, it carried immense weight. A glance, a posture adjustment, a brief sentence. They hushed rooms faster than long speeches ever could. None of it was accidental. It was deliberate. He crafted an atmosphere not through presence, but through purposeful absence. Because the most captivating people never demand attention, they compel it. And that leads to a deeper truth. Why was presence so important to Machiavelli? Because presence is power before the battle even begins. If you've already captured the room before uttering a word, there's no need to fight. People don't yield because they're forced. They yield because they sense they already rank below you. That's what presence truly is, an unspoken social order. And it starts with energy control. Most men lack it. They walk into a space leaking energy everywhere, grinning excessively, nodding too eagerly, reacting to everything like they need affirmation. Machiavelli refused to play that role. He reserved his responses. He didn't put on emotions to make others feel comfortable. He let the silence hang, let them wrestle with not knowing what he was thinking. That made him powerful, not by aggression, not through anger, but by becoming unreadable. And what people can't predict, they instinctively fear. So they lower their voices. They become cautious. They start paying attention to you. Now the script has flipped. You're not adjusting to the room. The room is adjusting to you. That's the goal. Not to outtalk everyone, not to control the conversation, but to let silence carry such weight that it begs to be interpreted. You want whispers like he hasn't even spoken, but something about him stands out. That's not charisma, it's precise, intentional restraint. They say the eyes are windows to the soul. Machiavelli disagreed. He saw them as instruments, not for connection, but for intrusion, for disarming, for silently commanding respect, making people uneasy without ever opening his mouth. This is the second law, mastering the use of eye contact. Most misuse it. Either they avoid eye contact out of insecurity or overuse it out of desperation. Some stare too long, trying to look dominant. Others look around nervously, trying to evade confrontation. Both betray a lack of control. Machiavelli did neither. He didn't hold a gaze to intimidate, nor did he glance away to appease. He made eye contact just long enough to be remembered, but never long enough to be understood. That created not aggression, but pressure. Because when someone meets your gaze just a bit too long, without blinking, without smiling, without breaking, you start questioning yourself. Did I say something wrong? Is he judging me? Why can't I figure him out? That tension becomes your advantage. Your aim isn't to be threatening, it's to be impossible to decode. Because while confrontation can be met head-on, mystery lingers, mystery unsettles. Machiavelli mastered this art in every environment. During negotiations, his stare carried patient expectation, not pleading, not defiance, just a steady weight. In courtrooms, he would sweep the room slowly, never meeting the king's gaze first, but always making the king look at him. In private, he'd tilt his head slightly while someone talked, not analyzing their words, but detecting their weaknesses. And it worked. Because it's not loud speech that silences a space, it's a look that says, I see right through you. So how do you apply this today? Step 1, treat your gaze like a mirror. When someone talks to you, resist the urge to nod immediately or react expressively. Just observe and hold your gaze. Keep your face composed, not expressionless, not harsh, just calm. And wait. Your gaze, especially right after someone finishes speaking, should linger. Just for one more second. Let them feel it. Let them sit in that silence. That single second will sting. Because most people finish their sentence in craving validation. They expect a chuckle, a nod, a reply. You offer none. You remain still, and by doing so, you make them turn inward. Step 2. Scan the space like it already belongs to you. If you walk in and nervously look around, you've already surrendered. But if you enter calmly, make brief, intentional eye contact with one or two people, then look away as if you're still evaluating whether this setting even deserves your presence, you reverse the social dynamic. You're not seeking approval. You're deciding who, if anyone, deserves your attention. That kind of gaze alters everything. People start speaking with more care. They wonder if you notice something they hope to keep hidden, and without saying a word, you have muted the chaos. Step 3, use the delayed glance. This is pure psychological precision. Imagine someone trying to dominate the room. They're loud, overly expressive, desperate for attention. You say nothing, you wait. Then when they finish, you meet their eyes just for a moment. You don't react, you don't flinch, you simply look. Then you shift your focus to someone else and speak to them instead. The message is crystal clear. I noticed you. I evaluated you. I dismissed you. It's clean, and it leaves a lasting impression. The boisterous one now replays their words, not because you criticized them, but because your eyes communicated they weren't worth your voice. That's psychological control. That's how presence becomes influence. And here's the key: you're not doing this to dominate. You're doing it to eliminate noise before it begins. When your gaze carries more weight than your words, you don't need to demand attention. It naturally gravitates towards you. The room senses something unusual, calm yet commanding. They won't know why they feel the urge to behave around you. They just do. And that's what Machiavelli mastered. He didn't want fear. He didn't want adoration. He wanted to be felt like thunder on the horizon, that silent tension that quiets the birds, that makes people pause and listen. You become that tension, and it starts with how you look at people and how little you require their gaze in return. The most dangerous man in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one who remains emotionally untouchable. Not cold, not heartless, just unshaken. Machiavelli understood this deeply, because the moment someone knows they can provoke you, they own you. That's why his third law was what he called the art of emotional absence. Most people aren't guided by reason, they're driven by emotional turbulence. They take offense. They seek validation. They over-explain. They ask for sympathy through subtle cues, complaints, confessions, needless apologies. But to Machiavelli, these were nothing more than signs of a fragile interior. And he understood this: the more you disclose, the more ammunition you hand over. So he cultivated a presence that couldn't be touched because it didn't react. Picture a room crowded with loud, insecure, emotionally volatile men, and one man who's still composed, observant. He doesn't flinch at criticism. He doesn't bask in compliments. He doesn't soften under pressure. He gives nothing away, not because he's avoiding, but because he's already chosen what he believes and he doesn't need your approval to feel justified. That's the kind of presence that silences others. Because when everyone else is broadcasting emotion and you remain unmoved, you become a mirror. And nothing unnerves a person more than seeing their own mess reflected back without judgment or engagement. Here's how to internalize that power. Step 1, eliminate the urge to explain. Most explanations aren't for clarity. They're fear responses. Fear of being misjudged. Fear of being rejected. Fear of seeming lesser. But Machiavelli knew real strength is often misunderstood and should be. While most seek to be accepted, the strategic man focuses solely on outcomes. So when you feel the pull to clarify your stance, justify your choices, or soften your voice to avoid offense, resist. Let silence speak for you. Let your actions be misread. Let ambiguity linger. Because deliberate uncertainty commands far more respect than over-explanation. Step 2, remove your emotional tells. Most people unconsciously send emotional signals, a smile to ease discomfort, a chuckle to stay likable, a self-dig to appear non-threatening, a just kidding to downplay truth. Machiavelli discarded all of these. When he spoke, he didn't cushion it. When he disagreed, he didn't ask permission. When he gave critique, he let the silence settle afterward. That silence made every word echo louder. Without emotional cues, people are forced to sit with the full impact, and that impact lasts well beyond the moment. Step 3, let neutrality create pressure. This is the subtle mastery. You're not cold, you're not mechanical, you're simply unreadable. You respond with steadiness, not eager, not distant, not reactive, just grounded. Because once someone can decode your feelings, they can manipulate them. But when your silence becomes a mystery, people start adjusting themselves. They fill the quiet. They double back. They overtalk. And in doing so, they unintentionally expose all the things they were trying to hide. This isn't manipulation, it's influence through restraint. You've heard of social proof. This is social absence. You don't chase, you don't seek. You let others reveal their need to be noticed while you remain self-contained. And that's what shakes people most. Not rejection, not open conflict, but the chilling possibility that someone could look at them and feel nothing at all. Machiavelli didn't embrace that distance for effect. He understood its purpose. Because when you're emotionally neutral, you give people nothing to grip. No weaknesses, no reactions, no leverage, no buttons to press, no handles to grab. You become unreachable. And those who can't be touched don't merely silence a room, they linger in it. People register your presence not because it's loud, but because it forces them to confront themselves, their tone, their insecurities, their need for attention. You never have to call them out. Your neutrality does it for you. And here's the most powerful part. They won't even understand why they feel uneasy. Just that something about you makes them feel like they've already lost ground. That's the result of emotional detachment. And that's the presence Machiavelli carried not out of coldness, but because he was too focused on strategy to let anyone glimpse his soul mid-battle. Power echoes loudest when it's rare. Machiavelli grasped a truth many forget: the more constantly you're around, the less your presence matters. Not because you have lost value, but because overexposure kills mystique. That's why his fourth principle was strategic scarcity. If you're part of every discussion, reacting to every comment, constantly offering your thoughts, your presence blends into the noise. Predictable, common, forgettable. But when you become intentional, when your attention must be earned, not expected, people notice your silence. And more critically, they begin to fear what that silence might mean. Scarcity creates demand not only in economics, but in human behavior. Machiavelli understood that staying just a bit more distant than people preferred would spark anticipation. In anticipation, that's where true influence lives. Consider this: a man who talks in every meeting is quickly ignored. But one who speaks only when it matters and silences the room when he does becomes a figure of intrigue. Not because of what he says, but because of the scarcity surrounding when he says it. That's the essence. You don't need to be the loudest voice. You need to be the one whose absence is felt. This isn't about pretending to be distant. It's about becoming intentional in how you appear. The person who sits quietly, but when they lean in, the entire room leans with them. Here's how to cultivate that power. Step 1, withdraw with quiet consistency. Don't announce your retreat. Don't explain it. Just reduce your presence. Stop offering your every thought. Stop replying to everything. Stop showing up just to stay visible. Let your presence become an event, not a habit. If you once spoke 10 times, speak 3. If you used to attend every gathering, skip the irrelevant ones. If you used to validate everyone, pause. At first, people will be puzzled. Let them be. Confusion sparks curiosity, and curiosity leads to value. Step 2. Let your absence be felt without apology. This is crucial. Most soften their withdrawal with guilt. Sorry, I've been away. I just needed time. Didn't mean to ignore you. Machiavelli never did, because it's the mystery that fuels perception. When you pull magnet, let it hang in the air. Let the silence stretch. Let the space speak for you. Don't be in a hurry to fill the void. Let them sit with it, because that silence turns into something powerful, a deeper respect, and a shift in how they deal with you. Next time, they will approach with more care, speak with more precision, and pay closer attention. Why? Because now they recognize your value. Step 3. Return with composure, not apology. This is where most people misstep. They disappear quietly only to come back nervously eager to be accepted again. Machiavelli did the opposite. When he reappeared, he didn't explain his absence. He didn't excuse the silence. He simply walked back in with calm control. And that contrast amplified his impact. Because silence followed by certainty carries immense psychological weight. The message is clear. He didn't need to come, but he chose to. That kind of presence is power. It shows you are not chasing attention, you're bestowing it. And people adjust to that. They slow their words. They monitor their voice. They pause because your silence trained them to do so. You've turned rarity into a signal, and that signal into authority. This is what it really means to command a room, not through noise, not through status, but through intentional absence. Machiavelli never tried to outspeak the loudest man. He let them exhaust themselves while he stayed quiet, appeared rarely. And when he did, he arrived like a season inevitable, measured, unshakable. You don't need to be charming to take control of a space. What you need is stillness that unsettles, eyes that assess, emotions that don't beg for notice, a presence that retreats before it ever pursues. That's how cold presence is, forged through carefully crafted moments of absence. Eventually, if you follow these principles, something strange starts to happen. You enter a room and without saying a word, the atmosphere shifts. People trail off mid-sentence. They exchange uncertain glances. Some offer polite smiles that don't quite land. Others suddenly adjust how they're sitting or speaking. That's not by chance. It's not coincidence. It's the result of honing your presence so precisely that your mere arrival feels like a silent judgment. Not because you aim to intimidate, but because you've become someone who doesn't need the room. You study it. You weigh it. You decide whether it's even worth your time. This is presence born from absence. It's silence that speaks louder than ambition ever could. Let's walk through what that looks like. You step into the room, not rushing, not dragging, but moving like someone who has nothing to prove. You scan, not anxiously, but with intention. Not searching for approval, but identifying leverage. You don't smile unless it's deliberate. You don't wave unless it breaks the silence on your terms. And above all, you never speak first, and they feel it. They feel your lack of need, your control, the energy you conserve. And almost instantly, they begin to leak theirs. They start to shift in their seats, fidget, over-explain things no one asked about. Fill silences you don't even register as uncomfortable. You haven't spoken, but already you've become the psychological anchor in the room. Because stillness builds tension, and people can't stand tension without a reason. So what do? They adjust themselves to ease the discomfort. That's quiet authority. It's not about being louder. It's about creating a gravity that causes others to soften their tone without even realizing it. When you've cultivated your presence through practiced, calm, precise eye contact, emotional detachment, and intentional absence, you stop needing to speak to establish dominance. You become the benchmark. Even the most talkative person eventually falls silent. Not because you silenced them directly, but because your calm made their chaos look ridiculous. Let's go deeper. Imagine someone approaches you with high energy, big smile, voice too loud, too cheerful. Most would match that energy just to seem friendly, to reduce friction, to blend in. But you stay steady. You let their enthusiasm fall flat against your composure. You look not with judgment, but with calculation. You speak slowly. You blink normally. You wait an extra second before responding if you respond at all. And in that delay, they start recalibrating. Their voice slows. Their grin fades. They look around, unsure why they suddenly feel unsettled. It's because you didn't match their frequency, you replaced it. Without pushback, without needing to dominate, without effort. That's the cold presence Machiavelli embodied. Not dramatic, not reactive, just grounded so much so others couldn't find their footing. Because presence isn't about dominating others, it's about being so anchored in yourself that others instinctively react to you. And that reaction, that's your silence at work. That's their respect. That's the atmospheric shift you feel when a room settles without a command. That's your signal you've become the kind of man Machiavelli would rely on. Not for your words, but for your restraint. Now they pay attention, not because they're instructed to, but because something inside warns them. This man's words will matter. Don't interrupt. Observe him first. That's how you command a room, not with volume, but with tension, not with noise, but with contrast. A presence so cool, so deliberate, so unquestionably commanding that it bends the environment to match it. True presence isn't on a tactic. It's not something you activate during a meeting or confrontation. It has to be part of who you are by default. Because the moment it feels forced, it collapses. Machiavelli didn't play at being composed. He was composed. Because he spent time in silence, shaping himself long before anyone was watching. If you want to walk into a room and hold it without a single word, your training doesn't happen there. It happens alone. Every pause, every look, every motion refined until it becomes your nature. So here's the question. How do you install cold presence into your default behavior? It starts with 4 core habits, each one built around a principle. First, practice stillness daily. The law of intentional stillness. Stillness can't be faked. The body reveals anxiety instantly. That's why Machiavelli would have trained you in discomfort deliberately. Begin here, find a public spot. Sit. No phone, no people watching. Just stillness. Hands steady, shoulders down, eyes fixed. Hold for 15 minutes. It'll feel unnatural at first. Your brain will scream for a distraction. But over time, you reset your baseline. You stop reacting. Your body stops leaking energy, and you become unreadable. Second, master your gaze, the law of directed eyes. Your eyes are always broadcasting. Most people dart their gaze looking for approval or reaction. You must do the reverse. Train yourself to hold eye contact not with aggression, but with composed awareness. Don't blink unnecessarily. Don't nod. Don't smile unless you choose to. Eventually, your gaze will stop asking questions and start making statements. And you'll watch others shrink in confusion because your eyes are saying, I see you clearly, but I owe you no reaction. Third, develop emotional opacity, the law of neutral expression. You don't need to be blank, you just need to be unreadable. The training when insulted, stay motionless. When praised, stay calm. When offered humor, don't rush to laugh. Not because you're trying to be stoic, but because you're taking control of your responses, not renting them out. This tension you build, this void of visible emotion, is pure power. People won't know how they stand with you, and uncertainty is the loudest silence there is. Fourth, reduce your availability. The law of scarcity. This is the final refinement. If you're everywhere responding to everything, you become forgettable. So pull back, delay replies, speak less, be the last to arrive, the first to leave. Make your presence rare enough that others notice the gap. Let them wonder if it's intentional. That wondering turns into curiosity. Curiosity becomes focus, and focus becomes control. You've now conditioned the room to orbit around you. Final Machiavellian concept. Power isn't found in your words, it's in how people change theirs when you're around. If they watch their tone, reframe their posture, rethink their phrasing, you've already imposed dominance without a sound. That's what Machiavelli designed. Not through mystique, but through subtracting the behaviors that scream weakness, the urge to be liked, the desperation to be heard, the compulsion to entertain. and what remains pure magnetic presence, still grounded, emotionally unreachable. A presence that bends the energy in a room without needing to lift a finger. It says, I'm not here to impress, I'm here to observe, and I'll leave when I decide. That's how you command a space. Not through fame, not through fear, but through the quiet force of someone who cannot be read, rattled, or ignored. And once you master that, you'll never need to speak first again.